Good afternoon. Hello, yeah. It's nice to have fans in the back. My name is Jenny Martin. I'm the president of Spokane Community College, and I'm happy to welcome you to Spokane Community College for the Winter Quarter Chancellor Town Hall event. This event is something that we love hosting because it gives our Spokane colleges an opportunity to connect with Chancellor Kevin Brockbank. I also want to recognize our Chief Institutional Advancement and External Affairs Officer, Melanie Rose, who will also co-host this event today. But first, I want to give our native land acknowledgement statement. We are honored to acknowledge that the Spokane colleges and our main campuses for Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College are located on the traditional and sacred homelands of the Spokane tribe. We also provide services in a region that includes the traditional and sacred homelands of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, Kalispel tribe, and Nez Perce tribe. We pay our respect to tribal elders, both past and present, as well as to all Indigenous peoples today. This land holds their cultural DNA, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands. We give thanks to the legacy of the original people and their descendants and pledge to honor their stewardship and values. And with that, I'd like to again welcome Chancellor Kevin Brockbank and Melanie Rose for this winter town hall.
Thank you, President Martin. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I know hopefully we have a lot of people online as well. We're excited to be here and get you caught up on what's going on here in our district. So we're going to start with a few questions of our own, and then we'll be asking you for your questions. So be thinking about what you want to ask. We're going to start with, what are your thoughts about the state of the district right now?
Yeah, we thought we'd start with a super easy question of it's exactly the state of the district. You know, the state of the district is always kind of a snapshot moment in time of what's happening right now. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we're in a really unique time historically for higher education. There's been a bunch of those times over the history of higher ed, the first community college, the first university, things like land-grant institutions, Higher Education Act, the GI Bill, the pandemic, I think, falls into that list. And locally for us, CTC Link Go Live is a significant thing. And now you have a situation where our federal government and the policies of leadership there are things that are will at minimum dramatically affect the way we do business in higher education, given that's I think a fair assessment based on what's happened so far and what's kind of on the docket. But if you look at that, you can see that there are three significant historical things in higher education that have happened to this institution in 10 years, right? And the road ahead is full of different obstacles going forward. But given all those things and everything we look at, the answer to the question of what's the state of the district now, I would say is, I just want us to answer it's pretty darn good. And it's pretty good because of that history of being able to get through tough challenges, but also we've positioned ourselves in a great way. And I'll talk about our position with the federal law stuff here in a minute, but also we did some things last year with the Board of Trustees that created some fiscal, safeguards that allow us to weather temporary disruptions. We talked about that a lot in the listening sessions. We are in a good position with our community. We're strong with what we're doing. Things are moving forward in a positive way. There's a million things to celebrate. So I think the state of our district is pretty darn good in the midst of a time that feels pretty chaotic and uncertain for higher education. I think we as an institution set in as good a position as anyone out there. And so I feel good about it. I'll fill in the blanks here as we get talking about other topics, but it's good. And I know it's worrisome for a lot of folks in different areas, the grant funding and dear colleague letters about DEI and civil rights and stuff, but we're going to navigate that stuff, and I'm going to talk about that as we get going through here.
Awesome. Well, you just mentioned a little bit of this next question. You've spent a fair amount of time in Olympia and Washington, D.C. over the past few months. How is that legislative advocacy work going? What are you hearing, and what are the key takeaways?
Yeah, so that does consume a tremendous amount of my time right now, and the presidents have both spent a fair amount of time in Olympia as well, trying to advocate for what's happening. So let's talk about Olympia first and our state situation. We've talked about this multiple times, in that the state budget shortfall is significant, billions and billions of dollars. So that's always a worry for us. But our situation and our advocacy at the state level is kind of unusually simple. And if you haven't heard this, it's a repeat. Most of you should have heard this at one point or another. But we are currently in a situation where the state Office of Financial Management overfunded the community college system. So this year, we based our budget on $2.6 million that we should not have had. So the problem with that is the state wants it back. We don't want to give it back. And so our first legislative work that myself and President Messina and President Martin have been working on at Olympia is to not allow that clawback to happen. We do not want to pay $2.6 million that we've already spent. And every college in our system is in that situation. So that's the first part. And we feel like our advocacy on that is in a really good position. We've had some assurances that that's going to be covered. Supplemental budget will allow that to not happen. We should be okay. But there's always some uncertainty, and we've heard a little bit of that as we get a little bit closer to the finish line. What I would say is we won't know until it's over. The downside to that is that $2.6 to $2.5 million going forward, there's virtually no chance at all that that will be funded in the biennium going forward. So we will be looking at an annual reduction in our operating budget of $2.5 million at least. And so we are in the process, and we'll talk about budgeting here in a little bit, of how are we going to adjust for that. So Olympia is simple this year, but has some consequences. What you'll see on a state level is the statement that no cuts to community college system. We do get cut, ours is a little bit more under the radar and a little bit more stealthy going forward. So, but we're not in the same boat as the higher ed institutions that have been given a 3% mandatory cut. So good shape, once again, all things considered.
DC.
Yeah, DC. So, I don't even know how to start this. But so our federal DC and advocacy there is more complicated. I think everybody understands that there are initiatives and concepts and philosophies about higher education on the plan that are not helpful to us. There's been suspension of federal grants that apply to us. There have been dear colleague letters from the Department of Education about DEI work and violations of civil rights acts. There have been other things proposed that are in the hopper that are really damaging. And we are doing everything we can to advocate for those things as we see them coming. A lot of those things, though, are preemptive and not worth kind of sharing at this point. But I can tell you that we regularly communicate with all three of our elected federal officials for this region. So Senator Murray, Senator Cantwell, and Representative Baumgartner will have heard from our offices this week, at least twice, each of them. And there are some things with budget reconciliation that are concerning. That being said, I think the important thing to talk about here is what we talked about during the listening sessions that we recently had. And that's the decision-making process and communication process that we've adopted. And I think myself and the two presidents are 100% in lockstep on this. And we know that these things cause a lot of anxiety, and we're being really, really careful to not communicate things that might not be true until we have the information we need, until we've consulted our Attorney General's office, until we know that it's not going to change in a minute, and that we're giving you accurate information that is factual and worth reacting to. When we get, I'll just talk about the Dear Colleague letter. When we get that Dear Colleague letter, we spent all day producing one email, which doesn't sound very impressive, but what went into that one email is really extensive. We are committed to being pragmatic and intentional about our decision making as we go forward. We repeat it over and over again. We are going back to our mission, vision, and values, and the fact that students are what we do here and what we have to protect. And we all said it during listening sessions too. Keeping our institution open and vibrant is a core element of continuing teaching and learning and educating in this community. And we have to continue to work that going forward. And I'll let you in on something too. That decision-making process, we talk about mission, vision, values, we talk about students. What we don't talk about, but I can guarantee you is on my mind and the minds of both presidents is that this organization has the responsibility of the livelihood of nearly 2,000 employees. And we are not in the business of risking that as well, although that's not at the forefront. It is incredibly important to us. Our students are important, we need to serve them, but you are also incredibly important to us. And we are trying our hardest to protect the funding that goes into those things that provide you with jobs and that are critical for your well-being. And so although we may not talk about that publicly very often, I want you to understand that the three of us and all of us at executive cabinet level are very attentive to this is an organization that is important to our community and really important to our employees as well.
Awesome, thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, budget. Let's talk about the budget. We just had a budget survey here about a month ago. What did we learn from that survey, and how are these results informing our budget planning process?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say about the budget survey and the listening sessions is just thank you to everybody who participated in those things. I know that the listening sessions were informative for all of us who participated in them. It helped us get perspective of what everybody's thinking and concerns and asks, and was really helpful in us reaching a solution there for the moment. And the budget survey is no different. The participation was super high, and people were honest about their thoughts and opinions about what could or should happen. The themes that came out of that certainly had to do with personnel and organizational structure, consolidation, duplication, revenue creation. There are some really good ideas in there, and there are ideas that we've taken all the raw results, which we're not going to distribute to the public, because there are some pointed comments in there, but everybody at district cabinet is reading them, and we're using those as part of the decision-making process for the next exercise. So we talked about the fact that we expect to be short $2.5 million at a minimum going forward. So we have given the assignment to each of the three pillars, SCC, SFCC, and the district, to generate a scenario of how would you make a 2% cut. And the budget survey responses absolutely will influence what is produced in that exercise. And there are some things in there that even if they don't come out in that budget exercise, will be full discussions at the cabinet level. There are good ideas in there. There are some ideas that are not standard ones that we would typically see, but I think there are ones that need to be discussed. And so the information you've provided in the budget survey is absolutely part of that scheduling and planning going forward. So what will happen is, through a series of, I'm not going to go through all the meetings, this would be kind of ridiculous, but at some point, each of those three groups will get in the room and say, this is what my 2% cut looks like, this is what my 2% cut looks like, and then we will strategically find places to balance our budget with the idea that we're losing $2.5 million. And I stress the word strategic over the word equal. We will not make cuts that make it equal or equivalent so that each of the three pillars shares equally in that cut, because that's not strategic. And so if it all comes from the district, it will all come from the district. If 2% comes from one place and 98% comes from another place, that's how we'll do it. So I will almost guarantee you that it will not look fair, but it will be the decisions that will best position us going forward to be sustainable and strong. And so sometimes those are tough decisions to make, but we're in a situation where tough decisions are going to have to be made. So we have typically, as a district, in the 10 years I've been here previously, we made decisions like that based on but equal cuts. We are not doing that. And I've promised that for years and years in all the different positions I've been in, and that's going to be the situation here too. But it will be thoughtful, and when we get done with it, there will be a full report that shows where it's coming from and how we're doing it and what other things we're going to continue to investigate. This is a moment for us to capture an opportunity to be more efficient, more effective, and in a way that's thoughtful and strategic. And we also have some resources that can soften some of that too.
Okay, kind of related. I think we've all heard about Governor Ferguson's proposed furloughs for state employees. What are your thoughts about those furloughs as a way to close the state's budget gap?
There's two responses to that. First, some of that came out in the budget survey. It was suggested that people take voluntary 11-month contracts, 11-and-a-half-month contracts, and so the idea of reducing wages based on number of days worked was out there. What I would say about the governor's furlough proposal is we were in Olympia when we heard about it, so we actually got some firsthand knowledge of that, which is the governor's proposal was not coordinated with the legislative branch. And so his suggestions are not, to our knowledge, not vetted and supported by the legislature who actually sets the budget. So his budget is a suggestion to the legislature, which they can take or leave. I would say we did not hear anything in Olympia that that's totally John Norman right there. I mean, you could just stay. Everybody knows now, John. I would not give anybody a hard time like that except for John, because I know he's got a good sense of humor. So when we were at Olympia, the general sense was that there's not a connection there, and the furloughs were not done with some considerations that are important, which are labor unions and consultation with them. Furloughs are complicated, and I'll tell you what I think is the biggest complication to it is it's an inequitable way to get there. It's much easier for me to take 12 days off a year with no pay than it is for some of our classified staff who are not in that same position, and that's just a fact. And I'm keenly aware of that. And if we are ordered to take furloughs, how we do that, I hope locally we have some flexibility, because we're going to take that into account. That's my problem with the furloughs, is it's inequitable, it's unfair.
Okay, fun stuff. Let's shift gears for a minute to fun stuff. What are you most excited about right now?
Yeah, so this is sort of a follow-up to what's the state of the district and why am I saying, we're doing pretty good. I will say that I'm excited about a bunch of things, and it starts with little things like the tech high school here and our partnership with SPS on that is really transformational and awesome, and it's a great opportunity for us. I'm also, if I go across town to SFCC, I'm really excited about the Sasquatch Soiree, the Foundations event, and the new Fine Arts building, and having an opportunity to show that off to some of the people in town who can really help promote that and make that a visible resource. There's just some great stuff happening there. I think the fact that you can see a continuous and constant rebound of enrollment at both colleges is exciting and inspiring. The fact that you also can see both colleges staying on a path to continuous improvement for students and removing barriers and not letting up on the idea that we've done 5 things for guided pathways, we're just going to kind of put it on cruise control now. That work continues to be ongoing and inspired. And on that theme, I'll specifically say that I'm really happy and excited about the collaboration with the 4 vice presidents of the colleges, in particular 5, yes. I'm going to talk about the 5th one in a second. But in particular, my history here, the vice presidents of student services and student affairs, there's never been a moment where they've worked as well together as they are currently doing. It just, on common issues, just really inspiring to me. And then also hear the same thing about the Vice President of Instruction and Vice President of Learning, doing great things. Just talked to the e-learning crew and talked about what a pleasure it is to work with both of them and the new structure and dual reporting. They're doing great things under a lot of pressure and a lot of work those are some of the hardest jobs in this district from an administrative standpoint by far. And I think the way they're working together is a testament to the character and the quality work they do. I just love it. So that's great. I'm excited about the meaningful business relationships and employer relationships Julie Parks is putting together for us. We are in a different position workforce-wise than we have been, and that helps us in our standing in the community. The work of Dr. Naomi Bender and with the tribes has been really, really fast-paced to start with. But we're making incredible gains in relationship building there. So it's the relationship building that really makes me excited. You'll also notice if you're on search committees that the pools we're getting for applications in some of these positions is out of this world increase. So the work of the HR department and that team that Fred Davis has kind of empowered has been really, really noticeable. But overarching is, I was kind of thinking about this question last night in particular, the thing I'm most happy about is being able to look at each of those different divisions and others that I haven't even mentioned yet. Like I can see Nicole out there, and she kind of led the way on this early, but is the idea of being innovative and risk-taking and being okay with not doing things the way we've always done them is starting to become a trend. And I talked about that when we did the chancellor search, and I would just tell you, it is going to continue to be a focus of mine that I encourage innovation and understand that sometimes it doesn't work, but in order for us to get better and to improve, we have to take risks and try new things and change the way we do work. And so that will be one of those things going forward that is going to continue to be really important. But I can see it in the people we have in place, and I think that's super exciting for us. And it puts us in a great position. You know what, I'm going to go back to one question too, when I talk about being in a good position. On a federal level, I want you to understand this part too, and this is directly from legislators, is that we as a community college system are in a really good spot, despite the fact it looks like everything that's happening in DC is counter to education. The focus is really philosophically on K-12 system and the university system. Now that doesn't protect or preclude us from any of these legislative moves or executive orders, but they still see us as workforce generators, low cost, shorter time to completion, value added to the community. In fact, I listened to Michael Baumgartner say it to a large crowd in DC, which is, you all do less with more, and I think you should get more. So how that plays out, I can't predict it, but we are not necessarily the focus of some of those actions. We just fall in the same strand. And things like the Department of Education cuts and things like that are certainly troubling, but we'll talk about that a little bit down here too.
Okay, Spokane Colleges officially launched our rebrand on January 22nd at the GSI State of Education event. At that event, you spoke about taking a different approach, about not being bashful, about saying that we build the workforce backbone of this region. What did you mean, and how's that going to happen?
Yeah, so I brought the speech because I couldn't remember that verbatim, but I'm going to read it.
You said that.
Yeah, well, I did say this. But for those of you who weren't there, which is the majority of you, I want to read to you what I said to this large, it was probably 300, 400 people, community leaders. So it was about a 3-minute speech, and this is the end part of it. It said, at Spokane Colleges, we have always done a great job of celebrating the excellent things that we do in our community, but we mostly celebrated that within the walls of our own institution. We are going to take a different approach to that going forward. We're not going to be bashful about saying that we build the workforce backbone of this region. We're going to take the lead on building that workforce that reinvests in our community and promotes economic development. We're going to celebrate our unrelenting effort to remove barriers for students. We are going to celebrate our resilient learners who have overcome every challenge imaginable to arrive at our doorstep and eventually walk across that stage. We're going to enhance our offerings with a focus on designing an education with life in mind. We are going to demonstrate why we put the community in our community colleges. And we're going to make education available to all by making sure everyone understands what we can offer them in their journey. And then the last but not least part was, we're going to make sure that when you hear, this is a part that drives me nuts in the community, by the way, you hear this thing where everybody goes, go Cougs, go Eags, go Pirates, and go Zags, that we never leave out go Sasquatch. So why I said that is it's specific, because I have been at numerous community events over the years where elected officials will compliment all these universities at a workforce event, like where we're expanding a factory, and the workers that are going to go in there are going to be our graduates, and we're the one that doesn't get mentioned. And I could use all kinds of words that are inappropriate for work for that, but it drives me crazy. And the reason it drives me crazy is for two reasons, and this is part of the reason I'm passionate about the rebranding. First and foremost, when you forget to include the community colleges in conversations about what makes this community great, you are missing the largest provider of higher education in our region. Until you get to Pullman, then they're a little bit bigger. But and I would stack up our faculty in the classroom against any one of those institutions, hands down. Just had this conversation with e-learning. We all agree. We provide the highest quality education. We provide the best wraparound services for students. We are the lowest cost. We are the shortest time to completion. We provide the most opportunities. And when we get left out, it is an absolute ethically inexplainable way to not show the opportunities for our possible students and our young adults. It is not okay. And the second part is that because I think we do this better than anybody else, I think it is unfair to all of you who are employees that you're not celebrated in the same vein as other institutions. When you talk about Eastern Washington and Go Eagles, and I love our counterparts at Eastern, I don't want to pick on them, but I know that we're as good as what they do, and in some cases we do things better, and we should always be included in that. Our economic impact to this community is equal to anybody's, and we should always be celebrated for that. So I know sometimes people are like, well, all these signs are not going to do anything. Yeah, it does do something, because I get more comments now about our engagement and the interest in this college than ever have. And I think that is incredibly necessary for students who can use this as an opportunity, and I think it's a necessary celebration of the work you do.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we're ready for questions. Who's got a question? Anyone in the audience? Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Smith, the Administrative Assistant 3 for Student Life. I have a question that maybe correlates to some of the recognition that we get. So I have a friend who has a daughter who is a cross-country athlete here at Spokane Colleges, and she would love to buy gear so that her as a parent, when she goes to meets, she's representing the brand, right? And she was telling me how there is no options for that. Can you speak to a little bit about maybe some athletics gear that would be coming or would help with that mission of getting us more recognition?
Hold on to the microphone to make sure I answer your question, because if I don't follow up. That is a frustration that I share as well. I would like for everybody to have the opportunity to be able to pick and choose apparel that works for them. The unfortunate thing is we don't have the facility and infrastructure to have just an open shop. We've done some of those things for employees to be able to order out of the online store. Our athletes do have a team store typically before the beginning of each season, and where they can order unique stuff. And honestly, one of my real moments of jealousy always comes, I go to the basketball game and all the parents have cooler stuff than I do because they ordered out of the team store. So that's when we ordered the online stuff, would have been in January. This is something I ordered out of there. That came from athletics and the same system that sets up that stuff. But that being said, it is not available enough for us to continue, for people to do it when it's convenient. and we are trying to figure out ways to work that into the bookstore more so. And I will also share this. I don't think we've shared this with the general overall public, but as one of the things that's come about of this, the recognition of the brand out there is some co-branding opportunities. And one of them is with Indaba Coffee, where they're going to have their own Sasquatch blend of coffee. Our marketing folks went down there and, I guess, taste tested and developed their own strand, right? But I think the one that's even more exciting, partially because it involves an alumni of ours, is the great PNW. Everybody recognize that as their apparel. So as an alum and a graduate of the graphic design program at SFCC, Joel has agreed to and actually approached us about doing co-branded material. And so in this spring, at some point, we're kind of finalizing the deals. There will be some co-branded stuff from the great PNW that will be available. And we're just going to continue to build on that as time goes along. It's not satisfactory for me either. Like, I want more of that stuff out there. But our mechanism for doing it doesn't carry itself quite like a four-year institution with a D1 athletic program. Also want to recognize back-to-back cross-country and WAC championships. So your daughter must be fast.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And if I have an opportunity to ask a follow-up,
Yeah.
as an administrative assistant, I am in the position to order a lot of swag. Right now I work for Student Life, so I have been working on orders for swag for Student Life. And I've heard a couple different things from some other admin assistants from both campuses about ordering swag for ourselves, right? I have ordered some swags for different departments in the past, and recently heard today that we're not supposed to order clothing items. And I don't know if you'd be able to speak to the exact purchasing rules, but is there a focus on maybe providing some better rules or transparency around swag, so that way departments who have budget for swag could possibly order for employees if that's possible? Right now there's a lot of gray area, especially for an admin assistant who's trying to comply with all of the different rules.
It's a great question, like an incredibly good question, because there are that particular question sometimes creates some misunderstandings and misinformation. So I'm looking at Linda McDermott to see, I just want to see her face to see if I say this wrong or not. No, let me historically tell you that a lot of times things like that come down to interpretation of rules. Our previous interpretation of rules from different individuals was like, if you buy a piece of clothing that's a uniform, you have to pay taxes on it, blah, blah, blah. That's not, it's not our current approach to it. And I'll have Linda maybe provide an email clarification on these things, because I'll miss some pieces of it. But here's the deal. So, like, Annie Silvers is sitting here with a very, very popular hoodie on that's blue, says SCC on one sleeve and SFCC on the other sleeve, and everybody wants one. Not only worn by Annie, but designed by Annie. But those items were created as part of the hoodie project with Spokane Public Schools, where we gave one of those hoodies to every kid in 5th grade at 3 different elementary schools. Those are promotional items. And a uniform is different than a promotional item. And so when we have items of swag, or whatever you want to call them, that we are giving out, they are promotional items. Like, they're no different than a pen or a lanyard or those kinds of things at a different event. So it's how you look at it and how you present it. If you're buying something specifically for yourself, that is a violation of use of federal or state funds. You're gifting. That's why this order that we do online in the online store is, if you want to buy personal stuff, you have to use your own money. Does that help?
It does. What about the Sasquatch long sleeve shirts that you gave to all staff? Would that be, because that's technically all staff, right?
Promotional, yeah. Yeah, let's give Linda the microphone so she can correct what I've said.
So great question, Katie. And the shirts that were handed out with the Sasquatch long sleeve, they were allowable based on the fact that it was part of a promotional event for the brand, and there was an expectation or assumption that you participated in some sort of event or activity in order to get that shirt. So we didn't just go out and buy everybody personal clothing. It was part of our branding promotion as well as attendance at an event. To add to Kevin's response, we do have very small window that we can do this from a state perspective in terms of using state money to buy personal clothing. Does it qualify as a uniform? Is it required to be worn? The IRS has very, very strict rules also, and that the comment about it being taxable, we don't want to tip any of our activities into the area where every shirt or whatever we buy using state resources has to then be show up on your W-2 form as a taxable fringe benefit. So.
And the other thing you won't see typically is that we do use different sources of money sometimes. So like I and the two presidents have some foundation accounts that are less restrictive because it's not state money. And so I can't remember an example, but I've used some of that money to buy things that I would give away to community members. We were actually very, very careful from an ethics standpoint of what we do and don't do. But it's a great question because it always comes up, and you've got a bunch of administrative assistants who are in that position. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Jeff, we've got an online question. Probably a bunch of them by now, huh?
Yeah, actually, pretty mild today. But one following up, that's just a suggestion, I would think, from Greg at SEC. Perhaps we could get an Indaba Cafe on campus that's open after noon on Friday.
Noted.
No, okay.
I don't know.
So-
Yeah, okay.
So now, sir, you're getting the hard answer, or the hard question answer.
Okay.
No, given the current budget challenges, I was surprised to hear about a raise in your salary, and would just appreciate some insight into how this aligns with the current financial strategy,
Yeah.
understanding the whole picture.
Yeah, let me go back and just talk. My salary comes up, and it you know, I'm not going to lie to you. I make an incredible amount of money, and I'm incredibly fortunate. And when I was offered this job, I had a dollar amount in mind I was going to propose as a salary, and the board offered me a higher amount, and so I took it. And then when we got into the next biennium, we wanted to make sure that our exempt and administrators also kept up on pace with other raises in the district, and so we had I think it was 3% the first year and 4% the second year. We added a 3% and a 4%, so it ended up being 6 and 8. I did not take the first year raise because my salary had already been adjusted to match the other chancellors in the state, and that's how the board came to that dollar amount, but it was not suggested by me. And that's exactly what it was. So what's happened since that point has been the regular COLA that has been put on each person's salary, depending on what work category you're in. There's differences there, but that's what the raise was. Yeah. And there's a question right behind you.
There's a question in the back. Erin. Erin will bring you the microphone. Thanks.
What's up, Dr. Brockbank? I know you was waiting for my question.
I really have been, Priya, and I'd be more nervous. I can't quite see that far. I wasn't sure if I could say Priya with her pre-prepared question or not.
Yes, it is.
All right, here we go.
I hope you are. No, I'm just playing. So I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, as far as safety and security. And both of those things are being targeted if you consider what we're facing with the budget shortfall and our current administration. And from what I've observed, I think that with everything going on, that's impacting how people treat each other and are showing up for each other. So my question is, support is often placed on the individual to navigate on their own. And so how are you, as someone who represents our organization, working, advocating, to create structural support systems that ensure everybody, regardless of their position, has access to resources and advocacy that they need to thrive?
That is a huge question. It's one we planned on answering kind of at the end, but I'm gonna get into the culture discussion right now, then, because you brought up a perfect transition for it. So, how I want to say this. I have talked the entire time I've been in this position about how important I think culture is at our organization, and how important it is that our folks feel welcome and celebrated and valuable across this institution, and the fact that, and the idea that we're all working together towards a common goal. And that is important to me, and also it's been clear to me, much harder to accomplish than I would have guessed. Because in my previous experiences, being able to change and influence culture has been easier. This has been really hard from this position with the different layers of an institution or organization we have to do it. But culture is so important right now. And Priya's asking about how do we support and provide resources for employees who are struggling? And that's a standard question, you know, doesn't depend on, not just for now, but it's always kind of comes up depending on what's going on. But I think there are some people that are having more of those intense moments than normal. So first and foremost, I would say this. The resources we have are available out there, and I think have been shared, but EAP is one of them. But I also want to really reinforce this. If you need counseling or help, your health insurance plan covers counseling. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. That's another resource for you. But here's the real challenge, culture-wise, is that I would love for it to be a place where you walk in the door and all we do is concentrate on the magic of helping students and making our institution better. And it's, you know, this utopian place of rainbows and unicorns and that great picture of you sitting down next to a student helping them. But we all know it's not like that. It never will be exactly like that. And the reason it won't be is because we all walk through the door with different stuff, right? We all have lives outside of this. This country is split politically, but there are other things that happen to people before they walk through the door, which is, you know, Melanie's telling me how she did an Ironman. Well, I just found out I have a terrible medical diagnosis. I got a puppy this weekend, and somebody else lost a pet this weekend. Your relationships, your personal finances, your drive to work that morning. We all have things when we walk through the door. And this isn't going to sound like a great answer to your question, Priya, but there are some things we cannot control and cannot help with. But what culture for me is, and how you answer that question is, the things we can control inside of this place become even more important. And those types of things are how we show up for work, how we listen and respect each other, how we treat each other, how we focus on the work at hand. And I'm going to share with you a little bit. We created a cultural DNA at the district cabinet level as an exercise to prove that we could do it district-wide. And we haven't accomplished that yet, but I want to read to you what the major highlights of that cultural DNA plan are. These are the headings. Working with purpose on purpose, reflect, relate, and respond, resolve and repair, for the common good, model the way, and everyone is welcome. So just as an example, model the way says, we celebrate successes by spotlighting each other, recognizing key benchmarks, and naming hard-won victories. We cooperate with and challenge each other to ensure competitiveness in the marketplace and to support a public seeking a quality education. We strive for equity, diversity, and inclusion in our executive team, demonstrating collaboration and collegiality that is genuinely seen and felt by the rest of our organization in the way that we think, speak, and act, and show up for each other. That's what I want this entire organization to be like. And if we were genuinely all operated that way every single day, that's the kind of support that we can provide outside of the things we can't control. So it's a complex answer to your pretty specific question, Priya, There are services and supports out there that we can provide, but the most powerful thing you can provide is those types of things at work. Celebrate each other, be respectful of each other, recognize wins, find things to celebrate together as a team. That helps a ton. And I think you've all either, maybe you work in a division that's like that right now, or you've worked somewhere else where that has been the case. It is an enjoyable way. You spend a lot of your day here, and we want that to be positive. So in my world, in my vision, that's what it looks like going forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, other questions? Jeff, do we have any online? Nope, okay. No more
How
questions?
much time do we have?
We have about 14 minutes. Okay. You want to ask about one of the ones on the back?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Melanie. There's a follow-up question.
Oh, follow-up, okay.
I'm just trying to share the mic. So, follow-up to that. All of those things are very important. And I think what's equally as important is accountability. And that starts with the person first, like individually.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, what happens when that's not happening? Like you've talked about the cultural DNA pillars.
Yeah.
And so, that's what you aspire, you want to reach towards, but what happens when it's not happening? And I'm not calling nobody out, but I just think that that's an important conversation too.
No, that's a super important question on top of it, which is hey, you can say that if you want to, but how do you make that happen, right? And, the way to make it happen is not through iron fist HR, oh, somebody yelled at me, now you're in trouble. We certainly have mechanisms in place for, any variety of different workplace situations that are, not healthy and unproductive, and in some cases illegal. We have those things in place. But a lot of that, the reason I talk about culture over tightening up HR policies is because the last line in that part that I read was, we show up for each other. That's accountability to me. And there are certain parts that we as administrators, let me say this. When we have people that are not on the same page and not invested, we don't always know about that as administrators. Sometimes that's a very one-off thing. You don't see everything. You can't enforce those with HR rules. And frankly, that doesn't build a synergy around us as a team. What you want is this place so full of people who believe in that concept and are on the same script as far as helping students and building this place up, that people who come in who are not willing to be part of that feel uncomfortable enough to not be here anymore. And that is, so I'm going to tell a side story. To your prepared question, I'm going to tell a random side story. I've told it once before. It's not a great story, but to reflect on me anyways. But when I was raft guide in Glacier Park and for a bunch of years and river guide and all that kind of stuff, we had a great culture at that place. We had a kind of a team system where we supported each other at a level that, no place have I ever worked where it's been that awesome. And this is a bunch of not career professionals, we'll say, right? Out there for fun, mostly out there for themselves. But the team system we built really kind of made people buy into, hey, if somebody's got work to do, we all pitch in. Will you take our time off to come back in and help people clean up from overnight trips, big deals? It was implied. And there were guides who did not believe in that. And we were, frankly, we were kind of mean. I do not endorse that. But they did not feel invested or in that system to a point where we had a couple people quit in the middle of the summer because they weren't willing to be part of teams, and it made it to a point where they just didn't want to be there. And I don't want to imply at all that anybody should do things that make people feel uncomfortable. That is absolutely not the case. But when their culture is so strong that you go into a room and you know that the expectation is high to work on things, it spreads. I was in a room the other day with Wendy Jones, Wendy Jones, the Wendy Jones party, Rhonda Voorhees, Dr. Phillips, and then Kathy Albin should have been there, but she couldn't make it, talking to Second Harvest about what we could do. And just, you can see the passion in that room, and you can tell what the expectation is with those people about helping students. That's how you build that stuff. So we, in addition to asking people to be like that and being able to hand that to somebody in a job interview and say, this is what we want from you and this is what you should expect when you show up for work. Certainly there are HR policies that keep those things straight too, but that's more of a peer, mentor, peer accountability approach. Did I answer your question, Priya? I don't know who she's. All right. Culture is a very hard thing to describe and influence because it is very nebulous and a lot of people think about it in a lot of different ways. But at the end of the day, I want you to come here and see value added to your life when you do that. And I talked to the Gateway to College students a couple of weeks ago, and shared a bunch of probably mostly ignored knowledge with them. But when they were talking about careers, I just said, the thing I think I've learned during my career is what I'm glad I did and I fell into it is I have a job that's bigger than me, right? We all get the chance to know that when we are done here, we've helped people that we probably don't even know. That's an important part of that and an important part of building culture too.
I just want to say thank you. I think it's important that you even talk about the culture of the organization that you want, and to have a shared understanding of our organization's values. And I personally don't take that lightly. So I just want to say, yes, you answered my questions, and thank you very much.
All right.
Yay.
Last thing I need is Priya hounding me with constant email questions I can't answer. I wish there was a clear answer to that stuff, but I think you get the general passion about it and desire to. I'll work on that until I quit here.
Okay, other questions in the audience? Online? Jeff, anything online? Nope. How about, here's a question for you. What have you learned about tribal relations in these past few months that you didn't know before Dr. Bender arrived at Spokane Colleges?
So I joked around about Dr. Bender making a fast entry here, and I think that's true. What I've learned about tribal relations in that short amount of time, I don't know if I could capture just off the top of my head. I think I've been really, really excited about how the tribes have received us and the idea that we want to create a better relationship and better serve their students and be partners in the work. And the fact that the advisory council is coming together. I've learned more traditions than I knew previously about gifting, which are things I thought I knew, but not at the depth I know now. And so, my takeaway is having experts on particular issues, spearheading those things through, make a huge difference. And Vice President Parks, from Workforce, does the same thing. I've learned a bunch of things from her too. I really appreciate it when I'm surrounded by people who are teaching me new things all the time. I mean, jokingly, like if I'm the smartest person in the room, like we're in trouble. Like I don't. That's not my role. My role is to get people here who are, world beaters in the things that they're content experts on. And I think Dr. Bender has been that. And the ability to create quick, new, meaningful relationships and helping us sponsor this and run this government-to-government summit in, is it May? June. I'm ecstatic about it, frankly, and I think the possibilities are huge and just can't capture enough. It's been really good.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to go to the closing question. What would you like everyone participating today to understand and take with them from this town hall?
Well, One of them is I was going to talk about was the culture, which I just beat up for about 10 minutes in different ways. But one of my takeaways I want for people to have is the culture we create here dictates how we serve students. If you are happy, celebrated, inspired by what you do, that will trickle down to students. And that should trickle down through our whole organization. And we have work to do on that. But I think, like I said, I think you can see that I'm committed to it. And I'm going to be committed to it until my last day here. But culture is key right now when we have a situation where we have a lot of people who have some strong feelings about what's happening outside of work. That's important stuff for us too, and for us to be to provide the best spot available to spend part of your day on a job that's, like I said, bigger than you and important to our community. The second part I want people to walk away with is a general understanding that the road ahead is rough. I mean, it is full of obstacles and pitfalls and some really concerning initiatives that I think will, like I said earlier, dramatically affect the way we do business. That you cannot sugarcoat that. That is true, and it's challenging, and it's worrisome sometimes, and it's frustrating. But here's the deal. It is always the road forward is always over the obstacle. You can't run around that stuff. And if we are, and this is kind of goes to our decision-making process, which is if we are intentional and deliberate and calculated and consistent, and we just chip away at what's going on here, we will do as good a job as anybody in the country. And so you need to know that we have lots going on behind the scenes to try to make sure that we do protect what we do here, because we understand that education is the key to a great society. We have to keep that going. We will overcome whatever is thrown in front of us. There are going to be moments when it's frustrating and scary, but we'll all show up the next day and chip away at it. Promise.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a great rest of your day.